Hi guys, and welcome to another video. What we have here for you today is a Switch Lite. This was brought to me by a customer. She stated that it wasn't charging. When she arrived and she got to me, she was also stating it had a error coming up on the screen. Not at this moment at the point in time in filming the video, I wasn't 100% what the error was relating to, but I have now got a couple of ideas with regards to what I found whilst repairing this. So first things first, what I always do with these is I will plug it in to the ammeter, see what current draw we've got, see if it detects the charger, and see where we go from there. Instantly we can see we've got 5 volts detected at 0.06 amps, and on the other side we get nothing. So there's a good probability the charge port is definitely damaged, and I would say M92 for the fact that it's not negotiating 15 volts. So what we are going to do is we are going to start off by tearing this down. We're going to start by removing the 4 tri-wing screws from the back of the cover, and then there is 4 screws on so there's 2 screws on the top of the case and 2 screws on the bottom. So 2 are either side of the charge port, and then the 2 on the top are next to the LB and RB buttons. So I'm just going through here trying to find the correct bit, prior planning and preparation and all that. But just going to, once I've got the screws out, just get in there with my fingernails and pop this case off. Once I've got the case off, I am going to just give it a quick visual inspection, see if there's any obvious any signs of water damage, liquid damage, that sort of thing. But I think this is probably just a case of a damaged port that looks like it has taken out M92 at the same time. Right, so we are just going to pop this under the microscope for a bit of a clearer look, so we can see if anything in the connectors are damaged, if there's any corrosion around any components, that sort of thing. And again, as before, doing the visual inspection, it's just looking for anything that's out of the ordinary, just to see if there's anything that stands out, to be honest with you. And to be honest with you, this board is very clean, looks good, all the pins seem nice and solid. It's definitely not been opened and worked on before, and to be fair, there was very little to go on apart from the error and the draw that the current draw that the console had when I actually plugged it in. So I'm also going around all the flex connectors, just making sure they're secure, making sure, again, no corrosion, having a look at the daughter board. It's best to do this under the microscope because some of these capacitors are absolutely minuscule. But there is absolutely nothing obvious on this board, and this is the point where I decide it needs to come out, and first things first is we need to look to get the HDMI port off. So at this point I'm just going to go through and strip the console down, removing the motherboard, all the screws, components, so I can actually access the motherboard until we can get the board free and we can have another look. Now, I'm just going to pop this under the scope so I can actually have a look at the port itself. Now the port does look in excellent condition, doesn't seem to have appeared to have sustained any damage at all, but looks can be deceiving as there is 12 pins under the port that we don't have access visually or physically to until the port's off the board. What I'm doing at this point here is I'm just going around the board on some of the key capacitors. What I'm looking for is shorts to ground, so one side of the capacitor should be connected to ground, the other side shouldn't, so if it beeps on both sides it's a good indicator that there's something wrong there. Just going around probing them, and the ones that you can see me probing at the bottom of M92, which is the larger of the two square chips you see, black square chips. Two out of the three of that bank of capacitors are shorted, which is a good indicator that M92 is well and truly done for. So I'm just going to finish up, go round the rest of M92. I also have a quick look round BQ as well, which is a smaller of the two chips, both important for power and charge control. You've got your M92 that negotiates your 15 volts, and then you've got your BQ that actually controls the charging itself. So we have now got the board into board holders, and this footage is sped up a little bit. This is just me removing the port I'm going in with hot air at about 4 to 440, sorry, 4 to 420. Just going in from the other side, making sure that the solder's flowing all the way around. I want the ground anchors nice and flowing, get the heat in the board, and then the pins themselves will follow. Just be careful, although it does take a lot to tear the pads, it can happen, and I've seen a few people, myself included, remove pads by trying to take the port away too quickly. As you saw there, once you've got the heat and everything right, it does just drop away. Once we've got the port off, we can actually inspect, and as you can see, port came off nice and cleanly. There was no damage to any of the pads or any of the components in the area. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go in and add a bit of leaded solder to both the pads that are on the board and also the ground anchor, the through-hole ground anchor points. This will make my life a little bit easier because it will bring the melting temperature of the solder down, because I am using leaded, and it will also mean that because that temperature is lower, wicking it away should be that bit easier. So I'm just coming in here with some solder wick, cleaning up the pads, trying to get rid of as much of that lead-free solder that was on there as possible. When I do this, I am trying to clear the ground holes. Now the ones at the top of the screen, the top of that little picture next to the pads, I'm not as worried about as much as getting the bottom ground holes clear, because I do like to get in there with the hot air and drop it in. So those two ground anchor points still having solder in them is not a huge issue. So we've got most of the solder off. Just going to give it a quick clean and inspect just to make sure there was nothing I missed, and once we've done that, we can look to retinning the pads themselves. Just skipping on here, with regards to this, as you can see on the left there is a standard switch port, and on the right is a standard switch port that has been modified. I have I actually take a handful at a time down to my workshop when I need some, and I literally just take that top lip off, bringing it down enough so it slots into the Switch Lite case without causing any deformity to the actual plastic housing itself, because that little lip will catch and will bulge out the actual console housing. Right, so underneath the port, because we can't access this row of pins that I'm pointing to here, we do need to add some solder to those. So while we're under there, I tend to tin both the front and rear pads. So I will drop a small amount of flux in, and I will hit that with the iron, giving them a nice dollop of solder each, making sure obviously they're not bridged. We don't want them touching each other, and we don't want them ending up causing issues, because although we can get to the first set that I just soldered, this second set that I'm soldering now, the back pins, we can't get to those once the port's in place. So this is really important step, making sure that we've got enough solder on both the pads on the board and on the port itself. So I'm going to drop a little bit of flux in, and all I'm going to do is once again bring the hot air in, and I am just going to heat up the area, until both the ground anchor points, the solder in those flows, and also the solder on the pads flow. And then I'll bring the port in, I'll drop it into place, and once I've got it where I'm happy with it, I'll apply some pressure, a little bit more heat just to keep that solder flowing while I put pressure on it, and then I'll bring the hot air away and we should be good to go. Now, fingers crossed, we've got all 24 pads into the board. Doesn't always go that way. I think on this one, if I remember rightly, I did end up dropping a second port on there because I just wasn't happy with the connections. What I am doing next is I am going in, I've got a donor board here, I am just going to remove this M92 off the board, and there doesn't take a lot, again 400 to 420, it's usually good enough. Wait till the solder flows. Now this does need a little bit more heat than most chips because it is a QFN chip, it has got a large ground pad in the centre. But once you've got it flowing, it just lifts off nicely. We can get that out of the way and we can get the customer's board in place and get that prepped for getting the chip in place. I was just checking the fuse there just to make sure that the fuse wasn't an issue. Saw a video recently of a board that would actually connect with 5 volts, but the fuse had blown. So I was just making sure that I wasn't prematurely taking off M92 when it could have been a fuse fault. Always learning, that's the key to this game. Now, I'll put a small amount of flux around this chip to help lift it, and if I remember rightly, just about now I'm just making sure all the components that I may have nudged, as you can see there's a couple, whilst doing the port, are back in proper location. There's a couple that got slightly nudged out the way. If you got a glimpse there, the port's not the best looking at the moment. I'm more interested in getting the console tested and making sure that it is M92 that's the fault. So I'm just getting M92 swapped over. Looks quite nice, it's in the correct position, it's flat to the board, we've got some nice good contact and some nice looking solder pads. Going around just making sure all the components are good, nothing's touching, there's no bridges. When I got the chip in place I did have to go and remove, run around, I did a run around the legs, but because this is sped up it has cut that bit out. I'm just double checking the port and I'm still having issues at this point. I've cut that part out of the video, but I did go back and replace the port for a second time because although I was getting, once M92 had changed, I was getting 15 volts and the correct sort of boot sequence when you plug it in without a battery, it goes up to 0.5, 0.05, 0.06, back to 0.05, then down to 0. I was getting that, but I was only getting it on one side. I knew there was an issue with the port I'd installed. So what I did was I went back, reinstalled the port, and as you can see, we're now getting 15 volts and the correct amperage on the meter. So at this point we can pop the console back together. When you're doing this, just make sure you're being careful of the flex cables, moving them out of the way. You're not crushing components in between other parts of the board. I find Switch Lites a lot easier to get into the housing than the normal switches, just because you're not wiggling it around trying to get multiple connectors laying on top of the motherboard in one go. This one's a bit easier. You can wrangle them out from under the board a little bit easier. For this test, I'm literally just going to do a quick boot. So all I want is the board, the daughter board attached. I am going to hook up the game card reader so I can make sure that's working. Just the basics: screen, digitizer, LCD, backlight. So we need the daughter board, power buttons. And I'm literally just going to turn the console on. Well, I end up plugging it in to activate the boot sequence. We can see the charge symbol there, and the console will boot. So obviously I didn't check the game card reader at this point. I started putting all the screws back in, started getting it back to assembled condition, assembled state, just before I would actually put the shield on. And if I remember rightly, it was at this point that I actually looked to test the game card reader. So I'm just getting all the board put back together, whatever, all the screws in, and this is the point here where I'm testing the game card reader and I'm getting the error up saying it's not reading, which shows me that there's also a fault with that. I did have to nip off and speak to the customer and make sure they were happy for me to replace that as well, but I'm glad I caught it at this point rather than getting the console completely back together, because that wasn't something that was mentioned to me when it was dropped off. But I'm linking the error message that I was receiving when I was turning the console on previously with the game card reader, along with obviously M92 being bad, multitude of things. Obviously if the console's not working properly, the customer may not have known that there was damage to the game card reader as well. But I have spoke to her and she gave me the go ahead to do obviously everything you're seeing in the video here. So as you can see, I'm just swapping out for a replacement game card reader. Although the headphone jack and the backboard are, the PCB are donors, the actual slot on this game card reader is brand new. I do refurb them with new game card slots where I can, rather than just buying new full game card readers, because one, they're 3 times the price, and secondly, it means I can keep my costs down for the customer if I can reuse and recycle good parts by replacing the game card slot itself, which is this silver part actually on the game card readers. So popped the new game card reader in, booted it up, and it is now accepting the game, as you can see there. So that's all good. So at this point it's really just a case of getting the console all back together and reassembling it. So pretty much everything we did before in reverse. So shield back on, housing back on. In a moment you'll notice that I actually realise that I haven't put all the screws in the game card reader, and I end up taking the screws back out. There we go. Can't forget those screws. So yes, this was a little bit more complex than I first anticipated when I had the customer contact me. Had a few more aspects to it that I wasn't expecting. I was under the impression that not charging, not powering on, turns out it was powering on, there was still battery power left, it just wasn't charging, and the port was definitely damaged because it was only charging on one side. With the readings we got from the ammeter, we could see that there was also an issue with M92 as well. The customer will be extremely happy that they're getting this console back. They'll be coming to collect it tomorrow. By the time this video goes out, it will be a few days after, so they will have their console back. At the time of filming this, it will be the following day that they actually come to collect. So yeah, that is one Switch Lite, new game card reader, replacement M92, and we've also replaced the charge port, and this console should go on without issues for hopefully a long time, hopefully many more years. and we'll always be here, you know, if the customer needs us to do another repair. And if you also need a repair doing, please do contact us. I will include all my contact details in the description, so my website, my email address will be there. I'm available Monday to Saturday 10 till 6. I will try and get back to you as quickly as possible. I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for watching today. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, if you could hit that thumbs up button, I would, you know, greatly appreciate that too. Also, if you're not subscribed and you'd like to subscribe and you want to keep watching the content, if you could hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell. That notification bell will alert you every time I upload a video, and hopefully within the next week I should be back up and streaming. So I'm hopefully going to get some live streams in over the 6 weeks holidays, and if all goes well, maybe we'll make a weekly thing of it. May not be the same day every week, sorry, but we'll figure something out. So guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to see you again next time. Take care of yourself, look after yourselves, and keep it going.